Thinking about leaving your soul sucking 9 to 5 job, one of the biggest struggles I see people, especially as women, face is the idea of having that safety net, that enticing perks and benefits, and listening to that head trash of what will people think if I leave. I totally get it, and I've been where you are. That's why I created a free guide to help you if you're thinking about putting in that notice. It's called Unlocking Your Exit Plan. Discover 5 things you need to do before leaving your 9 to 5. This guide is filled with worksheets and steps so you will have hand holding along the way. You can download your copy in the link in the show notes, and again, it's totally free. Now back to today's episode. You're listening to the Hello C.S. Dorsey podcast, episode number 11. On this episode, I had a wonderful conversation with Kelli Barthelemy, the grief guru. Kelli teaches people how to turn adversity into advantage by mining the treasures hidden within. She teaches others to take any setback and turn it into progress in their personal and professional lives. Here's Kelli. Tired of staring at blank pages and don't know what to do? Or you completed your manuscript and now what? My name is C.S. Dorsey of HelloCSDorsey.com, and I coach writers and authors with the writing and self-publishing process. I wrote my book in 3 months. Yes, 3 months. It took dedication, discipline, and time management. After 3 months of writing and 3 months of editing, I submitted my book to tons of literary agents who said no or just didn't say anything at all. So I went to my best friend Google. My goal is to help, teach, and motivate writers to take that leap to become a self-published author. It will be a dream come true. Thank you, Kelli, for being on here today, and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So my name is Kelli Barthelemy. I am the grief guru, which that's not anything anyone grows up wishing to be. It's not something when you're a little kid that you say, when I grow up, I want to be the grief guru. But it is something that I have stepped into in my life. I've experienced a lot of different types of grief in my life, and over the years have had to kind of learn the skills needed to not just endure and survive those things, but I've really learned how to take, grief and hardships in our life and how to turn them to our advantage. So that's what I do. That's what I help people do, is to take really hard things in their life and harness the gifts inside of them and turn them to their advantage. So I live in sunny Fort Myers, Florida, with my husband, Michael, and my 3 children, Piper, Joseph, and Brianna.
Awesome. Yeah, grief guru. That's something that I've never actually heard that before. Now, do you find that there's a lot of people in your niche, or is it a very small niche?
Yeah, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and there's not a lot of people in this niche, and not a lot of people who are actually showing people things that they can do to help their situation. There's a lot of people talking about grief and the effects of grief and how you feel grief and how grief lasts a long time. And there's a lot of people describing grief. There's not a lot of people, in my experience, teaching how to navigate grief, and not just navigate grief, but heal from grief. Even the concept that you can heal and recover from grief is in the minority. And so that is really what I'm about. Educating people and helping them, first of all, with their belief system and their mindset that they can heal and recover from grief, and then giving them practical, tactical, like day-to-day, what are the things that you can do to actually do that in your life. And that is very much the minority. And it's the reason I got into this work, is because in my own life, I wasn't finding this sort of support, this sort of help, this sort of instruction. And so after I went through the incredibly long, painful process of discovering these things for myself, I felt really compelled to, share it with others and help people so that they don't just, have to forever stay stuck in grief or, for years and years or whatever it is, that they can actually be in control of the process and navigate much more quickly and efficiently.
Right. Oh, so tell us something about yourself that most people don't know.
Something about myself that most people don't know. I was trying to think of something incredibly interesting. I'm left-handed, that's a thing. And I have about 10 tattoos. So I guess people who see me at the beach know that. but, but but folks who meet me in my day-to-day life, they're usually pretty covered. So those are two things for you.
But being left-handed is very difficult, especially when it comes to, I've heard like when it comes to driving and doing certain things, that because a lot of things are made and geared towards majority of right hand people. So I've heard that it's been difficult to actually drive, or when you're left-handed, because you want to use your left side. Do you find that that has been difficult for you?
I haven't found driving so much. I mean, certainly just everybody assumes everyone is right-handed. So most things are built for right-handed people, but I haven't noticed it so much in driving. Certainly taking notes in school was always a thing, because the way notepads are lined up, if you're left-handed, your hand is dragging through whatever you just wrote. So you're smudging everything. But now everybody just does electronic notes anyways. But no, I can't say that I've experienced the driving one.
Wow, it's interesting. That's really good. So you got a handle on it. So that's a first for me hearing that.
It's part of my adversity. Yes, I've overcome the adversity of being left-handed.
That's really good. That's really
Yeah.
good. So our theme for this first quarter of the year is level up. How to um, how to level up in 2020. So can you give our listeners some advice on, how can they level up in their life? I think from your standpoint, it'll be more of a emotional standpoint.
Well, yes, emotional, but actually it applies to business, your finances, your physical health. The biggest thing that you can do, in my opinion, and the research, the more books I read, the more people I talk with, this idea of adversity and this idea of resilience, they're finding out now that actually there's no better indicator of success than what they're calling your adversity quotient. They used to identify people by their IQ, their intelligence quotient, and then the rave was the EQ, the emotional quotient. But now they're finding the AQ, the adversity quotient, is the best predictor of success in individuals. And you can have individual adversity quotient and you can have organizational adversity quotient. So what that means is how you handle adversity in the long and the short of it, how you view adversity. If you think that adversity means kind of the end of the world, if you catastrophize things, if you're able to keep adversity compartmentalized into the different areas of your life, or if you let adversity, for example, in your personal life bleed over to all your other areas of life, there's very specific metrics that you can look at to determine how well you handle adversity. And then it is a skill set that you can learn and build so that you handle adversity better, that you're more well equipped to handle it. And so whether it's, if you have a hardship, if you have a bad quarter in your business, how are you going to rebound from that? Are you going to view that as a personal failure and that, you're personally 100% responsible and you failed and now the rest of the year is doomed? Is that the way that you look at it? Or are you going to look at it and say, okay, this quarter didn't go how I anticipated. Let's dissect and figure out what are the lessons to be harvested in this quarter. What are the factors? What am I responsible for? What were things that were out of my control? And how can I move forward in a way that's intentional and, empowered by the failure? Like, are you harvesting the treasure that's hidden within those lessons and applying it to your business to make a stronger business going forward? That's the opportunity that's available to everybody. And a lot of people aren't really good at that, especially in our society. We want everything fast. We want everything easy.
Yes.
We just have a tough time when we have a tough time.
Right.
And everyone is going to face that, whether it is a personal loss of losing a loved one or a failed relationship or marriage, or in your finances or in your business. You're not going to be able to avoid some form of adversity in 2020. So my invitation to you is, if you'll embrace that, if you'll see it for what it is, if you'll get really good at how you frame that in your mind and set yourself to building on some of the skills on how to deal with that, you can actually use those things to catapult you to a much higher level of success, a much higher level of happiness and well-being. It just takes focus and intentional effort.
Right. So, do you have any suggested tools that that people can use to actually help them? So, is there like tools out there that people, or just everyday small things, or are there any actually some courses out there or something like that?
Yeah,
Any tools to help people to help them with adversity?
yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick over. So my main flagship course is Advancing Through Adversity. And the course was designed and most often used for people who are going through grief and have lost a loved one. But it's the same framework that you can apply to any type of adversity. So I'll quickly go over the 5-step framework with you. So the first one is kind of what we're talking about right now, establishing your framework. What do you believe and what do you want? So when something negative comes in your life, to sit down and think through, what do you believe about that? Like we said, do you believe it affects your entire life? Do you believe it's going to affect the rest of your year? Get really clear about what you're believing about this circumstance in your life. And then determining, what do you want? Where are you trying to go? Once those two things are in place, that's your framework. Now you're going to protect that framework from both external and internal influences. So if you're trying to move forward in your business, you need to make sure that you're protecting your eyes, ears, and your attention from things that would come against that framework. So doing an audit to make sure that, the things you're watching on TV, the books you're reading, the people you're surrounding yourself with, make sure they're all in line with where you're trying to go.
Right.
Internally as well. Sometimes it's our own, not sometimes, a lot of times it's our own thoughts and thinking that will talk us out of things before we ever get started, that will try to convince us that things are never going to get better, or, this is impossible, or whatever that negative self-talk might be for you. That's why it's so helpful to have the framework, because you literally can talk back to your mind. What I'm learning more and more is that what we say and do is more habit than anything else. Our brains are incredibly smart, and they remember patterns and they remember habits. And so the more you do a thing, the more it becomes automatic. So that's why having your framework established and repeating it regularly, having it written down, being clear about what you believe and what you want, is really training your mind to do it automatically. So the more you do it, you'll find when those negative or overwhelming thoughts come your way, your mind is just going to kick into gear and go back to your framework. The next step, we're already to step 4, which is community. So making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who are positive, uplifting, and in agreement with your framework. I find this in the grief space, that there's a whole lot of support groups and there's a whole lot of people who get together every week and commiserate and share, but they never really move on. They're
Right.
they're hurt every week. And while it might feel good to be surrounded by people who understand your pain, they're never really moving out of their pain. So you have to, again, be really intentional and disciplined about who is in your community. Are they people who are walking in victory in the thing that you're trying to walk in victory? The example I always use is, if you were trying to lose weight, it would not be a good idea every Tuesday night to go hang out with people who are overweight while they eat pizza and talk about how they can't lose weight. That would not be a good use of your time. So you need to be really picky about your community. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are in agreement with the framework that you set and have some victory in it, and can be role models to you and can be encouragement and support to you. And then the 5th step is finding a purpose for your pain. And again, that can be, this can be emotional, business, finance, but finding a reason that this awful thing that happened to you, or this negative thing that happened to you, how can it be used for the good? I just believe that everything that happens to us, both good and bad, is not just for us, but it's for the benefit of those around us. And if you look, there is a purpose for everything that happens. The purpose may just be that you learned a lesson, that you're now a smarter version of yourself, or a more empathetic version of yourself, or maybe a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. Or you can take that negative thing that happened and go help someone else to avoid the same mistake. When you find
Yeah.
for your pain, when you find a reason to pay it forward or to make the world a better place, that's where the magic happens. That's where that thing that was meant to harm you actually turns for good. And it's incredibly rewarding. It's incredibly fulfilling. And that is the secret sauce of how to take adversity and then turn it to your advantage. So that in a very brief overview is the 5 steps of our main Advancing Through Adversity course and what I help people to do.
That's awesome. Going back to when you say your community and set up yourself basically around and surrounding, not necessarily, for me, this is really good that we're talking about this because so funny you mentioned that, I was looking at my Facebook page, my personal page, and I had like 230 friends on there.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the friends were people that I went to school with, also
Mm-hmm.
family members as well. But I found that a lot of those people, they post things on Facebook. It's in my feed and it's bringing me down.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no more. So
Yeah,
before this year even hit, I said, I'm not going to be depressed by somebody else and what's going
absolutely.
on. I unfriend, I think, probably over 150 people.
Mm.
Just completely unfriend them. So now I only have like group posts or business posts. I'm like, this is the level that I need to be at, and I need to get advice from people who may need help and asking a question. I want that feed in my feed so it can help me out to be better in my business or career, things like that. I don't need anything in my feed that's saying, oh, someone got killed today. And I don't want to, that's what the
Yeah.
news is. You know, I found that I was getting not, well, I would say depressed reading that
Yeah.
stuff. And I said,
Yeah.
I can't read this stuff no more. You know,
That's so
crazy.
smart. And I got to tell you that a tip that I do, I don't unfriend people per se, but I unfollow like crazy. So you can unfollow someone, but stay friends with them. So you just don't see any of their stuff in your feed. And I honestly, like, I'll look for a reason to unfollow somebody. Like, that's half of what I do on Facebook is like, oh, unfollow. Uh, and it's so true, and it's that kind of stuff that we don't pay attention to, that just seems mindless and just sort of happens, that so affects your state of well-being. I joined because of my story and the work that I do. I joined several grief support groups and overdose groups and all these things so that I could make myself available and get a handle on the folks that I'm serving. And same thing, after a few days, I found a noticeable change in my mood and my energy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't remove myself from all the groups, but I unfollowed them all because my feed was like this constant people who were just really going through it and really
Yes.
overwhelmed, and that's one of the things I teach is boundaries. Even if you're doing work that's helping people, what kind of boundaries do you put in place to keep yourself okay? Because you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help anybody else with their oxygen mask. And if you burn yourself out and deplete yourself, you're not going to help anybody. So that is such a huge piece. If you're going through extreme adversity as well, like, it's not a luxury. You have to get really good with boundaries and really good with self-care. And those are some of the lessons that serve you well in every area of your life, even beyond whatever challenging season that you're in.
Right. I agree completely. I agree. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy we're having this conversation.
No, it's good.
I honestly thought that was like completely mean, but I was like, I'm trying to get somewhere in my life. I can't continue listening to that, and I knew that's what was making me depressed. I knew it because I was reading everybody else's feed and it was getting to me, and I said I can't do it this year no more. And I saw a big difference
Mm-hmm.
in my confidence level
Mm-hmm.
and in me in general, my mood, my morale, everything has completely shifted. And I was like, I should have done this years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people, and I say like do stuff like that and make no qualms about it. Like you alone are responsible for your mental health and well-being and
That's
success,
right.
period. Nobody else is. And you need to make no apologies about, you know, removing or eliminating or limiting that. Not everybody should have access to you. You know what I mean? Like not everybody is just entitled to have access to you, and you need to make no apologies about being intentional about who you choose to be able to have access to you, as minimal as even on your Facebook feed or in your life in general. And the more clarity we get about that, the faster we're going to grow and accelerate and do all that we're intended to do. So well done, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. So what's next for Kelli?
Yeah, I have a couple things in the works that I'm super excited about. I've written my first book that I
Oh,
thank you. And I am getting ready to launch it in February. So my birthday is February 16th. So I figured that is a good a day as any to launch this book. So it's called You're Not Crazy, You're Grieving. Because for anybody who's been through grief, it is, you know, up is down and down is up, and you forget things and you don't sleep and you don't eat, and like just a lot of crazy stuff happens to your mind and body. And so I just want to let people know you're not crazy, you're just grieving, and there is help and hope for you. And so that's the book. I'm really excited about that. I also have a nonprofit that I've started in honor of my son, because I lost my son, Quentin, to a drug overdose July 8th of 2018. And so we have an organization called Q's Army, which is all about kind of two things: helping raise awareness about the opioid epidemic and telling stories, but also helping families who've lost loved ones to overdose. And so we have a support group. I hate the word actually support group. It's an encouragement group. We have an encouragement group where we meet with families who've lost loved ones and get them tools and resources so that they can move forward on purpose, in purpose, and find healing for their grief. So those are a couple of things that I'm working on right now.
That's awesome. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. I'm
Yeah.
thankful that I was, well, you're never prepared to lose a child, but that's a huge part of why I got into this work. And a year and a half before I lost my son, my mom committed suicide. And so that was actually the beginning of this really in-depth journey of grief for me. February 1st of 2017, she took her own life, and grief had its way with me for several months. So it was then that I started researching and trying to learn how to recover from grief. And so I had learned quite a few skills. So when my son passed away, it was kind of night and day difference. The mourning grieving experience was night and day. And that's when I really was like, you know what, people need to know this. They need to know that grief doesn't need to just have its way with you, you know, for the rest of your life.
Right.
There's a lot of people who just never really recover. And actually there's coaches and people out there saying you never do recover, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just here to say, you know what, no, it's not possible, or it's not impossible. I'm rather, you know, it's not easy and it's not instant, but it is possible. It is available for anybody. You can recover, you can live an amazing, joy-filled life even after, you know, devastating loss. And so that's now what I'll be doing, you know, for the rest of my life. So that's an example of, you know, intense hardship can completely change the direction and trajectory of your life. I never in a million years thought I'd be doing the stuff that I'm doing now.
I completely agree. And I was going to mention that, you know, it is hard losing someone you love. It's very, very hard. But at the moment, we're not thinking, the plan, where that happened then and then where we are today and what what good came out of it. I do want to say, because the reason why I'm piggybacking on what you talked about is because my grandmother had passed, and she was the glue to the family. She was all of our worlds, and she passed right before it was getting ready to hit 2000, the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very devastating. It really was. And she was a church woman. She loved God, believed in the Lord and everything. None of my aunties, none of her, grandkids even went to church. We went to
Mm,
church with her, but not actually went and believed.
right.
What good came out of it was my mom and her siblings went to the church that she was going to, just to thank the pastor for doing the eulogy. So my mom always tells the story. I went there just to, out of respect and to thank her for doing the eulogy. But little did she know was that the course of her life and my life too was going to change completely. Not only did she go that time, she went another time and she kept going. And I kept going
Mm,
with her and I kept going. And throughout the years, been almost 20 years now, the blessings that
mm,
we have received, and it just amazes me so much. If my grandmother had not passed, we would have not went to church, and we would
mm-hmm,
have not saw, God for who he was for ourselves,
mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's hard. It is so hard, but in the end, it's a beautiful thing something beautiful that comes out of it. I mean, like, look at your situation. Would you have started these different programs, wrote a book, if that had not happened?
Yeah, no, not at all. I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing right now. And I wouldn't be living as rich and content and rewarding and fulfilling life that I am right now. And like truth be told, I always go back and forth. Like I would rather have my mom and my son here and me living my boring old life. You know what I mean? I'd rather be
Yeah,
like
yeah,
hanging out with them on the couch doing what I was doing before. But since they're gone, I can't control that they're gone. I can harness and acknowledge every gift that has come out of it. And
right.
what I help people do, because it's really hard to see when you're blinded by the pain. You
That's right.
have the pain so that you can see clearly enough to pull those things out and recognize them and appreciate them. And so that's awesome that you recognize that about your grandma, because what other point is there of your time on this planet than to find out who you are and whose you are and your place, with the Lord and what your purpose is. Like that's why we're all.
That's right.
So the fact that her passing helped, your family move closer to that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really was. And
Yeah.
I thank God every day. I thank him so much. Yeah, I miss her so much. I miss her a lot. But honestly, me and my mom have come to terms and say, she was sick then, but living now in this day and age, especially with, a lot of social media, because she was worry ward. She didn't like her business and stuff out in the public. And I guess that came back from like way back then, back in them times, they didn't talk. They didn't say anything, they didn't talk. But we think to ourselves, if she was living now, would she be able to handle the way that things are going now? We're like,
Mm,
no,
yeah.
she wouldn't have, She'd be like, don't put my name on Facebook. And it would drive her, I'm serious, it would drive her crazy. So, God has his own time. He has a reason for every single thing that he does. And I'm just now starting to understand, his purpose and his time. So, it's a great blessing. It really
Yeah.
is.
Well, because you know where she is and you know where you're going,
Yes.
that the goodbye is not forever. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You're going to be reunited with her and you'll have all of eternity to spend together. And so, that was a big part for me, my framework, like I talked about. My framework when Quentin died was he's not gone, he's just not here. I will be reunited with him again and we'll have all of eternity to spend together. And I would say those 4 sentences, at first, moment by moment, minute by minute, and then eventually it became hour by hour and day by day. And conditioning my mind that that's the response, that's the truth that I was meditating on, helped me to deflect, any other thoughts or any other people that wanted to say contrary. And that was such a huge piece of my peace. That was such a huge
Yes.
to stay rooted in that. So
Yes. Okay. Any last minute advice you have for our listeners out there?
I just like to tell people, let go of your past. Your past doesn't define you, it prepares you. So for
Love it.
had stuff in 2019 or before that that you're not proud of, or a failure or a hurt, whatever it is, your past does not define you, it prepares you. So take a look at your past and what has that uniquely qualified you and prepared you to do. Look at it from that lens and step into the rest of 2020 with intentionality about that.
I love it. I love it. So how can everyone find you?
Yeah, they can find me. Probably the easiest way is thegriefguru.com. That'll take you to my main website where we have a bunch of stuff available, and that's the same handle on Instagram or Facebook, The Grief Guru. You should find me in all of those places that way.
Okay, perfect. Well, I thank you so much for being on today. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be on my podcast today. And I really enjoyed our conversation. I really did.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for just creating a platform and a space for people to share, encouraging, life-changing, inspirational. As we discussed, there needs to be more positive messages going out in the airways instead of all this negative whatever. So thank you so much for creating the space for people to be able to do that. I know all of your listeners are blessed and edified and encouraged by the information that you share.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Go to hellocsdorsey.com to subscribe to the latest episodes or subscribe on the platform that you're listening on now. And remember, nothing is impossible, so let's make the impossible possible on today. Until the next time, take care.